Well, it has been a big week in Bury St Edmunds, with local election cancellations, MPs voicing their anger in the Houses of Parliament, and to calm everything down, I talked to a business owner that went viral on TikTok. Let's get into it. First up, the news came out this week that local elections have been cancelled for 2026, and one MP voiced his anger in the House of Commons.
People in West Suffolk are furious at the prospect of the county council elections being cancelled yet again, and I want to reiterate my opposition to that decision.
The Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill is currently going through the House of Lords, and I caught up with MP Peter Prinsley to talk more about how this affects young people.
There's certainly a lot of people are worried that young people are spending excessive amounts of time on somewhat unregulated smartphones.
Business rates are going up in the UK. I talked to one business owner who gave me some advice for his fellow compatriots, and I also talked to our Bury St Edmunds bid CEO Mark Cordell, who gave me his views on the hospitality industry.
Increasing the minimum wage for teenagers or under 21s seems like in theory a good idea, but when the difference between employing a young person and somebody with experience is reduced because the under 21s minimum wage went up, again businesses will choose not to employ young people.
Plus, don't miss the Holocaust Memorial Service on Tuesday next week at 10:30 a.m. in the Abbey. The government announced this week that they were going to cancel elections in 29 councils across the UK. Here are some key reasons why they have been cancelled. Capacity concerns. Many councils argued they lack the staff and resources to organise intensive elections while simultaneously managing a massive structural overhaul. The government defended the move by stating that holding elections for councillors who would only serve a short period before their roles are abolished is a waste of taxpayer money. The reforms aim to eliminate duplication, such as having two chief executives or two sets of councillors to redirect funds towards frontline services like social care and road maintenance. Suffolk was one of these councils that had their elections cancelled. Here's what Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, Steve Reid, said. This is one in a generation reform that will transform local government for the better. Cutting through two-tier bureaucracy means faster decisions on housing, simpler access to services and more money going to potholes, tackling crime and caring for older people instead of being lost to duplication. That's what residents want and that's what reorganisation will achieve. That was Steve Reid. So, MP Nick Timothy has voiced his anger on Twitter.
We're supposed to welcome elections, whether we win or lose or whatever, because that's the point. The people are always in charge, not the politicians, not the council officers, not the civil service, but the people.
Now, what does a local council think of this? Well, Councillor Matthew Hicks, who is Suffolk County Council's leader, said the government has announced its intention to delay the May 26 elections in 29 areas in order to release essential capacity to deliver local government reorganisation. Suffolk is one of those areas. Suffolk County Council was asked to provide information to help ministers come to an informed decision, and we answered the questions they set. Matthew Hicks continued, alongside delivering local government reorganisation, we will now continue to work hard for Suffolk residents, focusing on their and our priorities, like improving our roads, improving SEND services and ensuring vulnerable residents continue to receive the best possible support. The Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, often referred to as the Children's Wellbeing and Safety Bill, aims to mandate that all schools in England implement policies prohibiting the use and possession of mobile phones during the school day. While much of this currently exists as non-statutory guidance, the bill seeks to make these school-wide bans a legal requirement to reduce classroom distraction and bullying. Additionally, the legislation is being used as a vehicle for broader debates on child safety, including high-profile amendments and consultations regarding a social media ban for under 16s and stricter age verification on devices. I caught up with MP Peter Prinsley earlier this week, and he gave me some evidence to support this case.
A lot of people are worried that young people are spending excessive amounts of time on somewhat unregulated smartphones, and you can see this yourself if you just look at a young person on a bus. They're continuously staring at their screen, and they'll miss their bus stop, because they're so absorbed in what they're seeing on the screen.
Now, I put to him that girls sometimes feel unsafe when walking down the road by themselves at night, or maybe even during the day. Here's what Peter Prinsley said about this.
I don't think there's a plan to stop people having smartphones. I think there's a plan to stop people going on to certain sorts of social media. I think that's the ban.
But
So I could imagine that a young person would still be able to have a video telephone call with their mum if that's what they wanted to do as they were walking along the street from school. I don't think there's a plan to stop that.
There's a big discussion on how you can stop people going on apps, and granted, it is quite hard, and I think Peter agrees with this, but here's what he had to say about it.
Well, to be honest, my concern about the plan to introduce this rule is precisely the problem of enforceability. The question is it actually practical to do this? Young people are all quite smart, and there'll be a lot of workarounds around this. If they don't have their own smartphone, they'll use a family member's smartphone. And so how are you going to stop that? And what are you going to do? If people are going on these social media sites that they shouldn't, you're going to prosecute all the mothers.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to be prosecuted? So I think certainly it's completely reasonable to try and discourage people from spending hours and hours on these social media sites. But I think my question is about how practical it would be to actually have a law to ban this. And if a law is not workable, then I slightly wonder why you would have a law. What I would say is that there is a problem with the content that some of these social media sites allow people to access. And I think that the social media companies themselves, the tech companies, ought to be held accountable if people are able to access harmful stuff on their systems.
Yeah.
Rather than prosecuting the users, I think we effectively should be thinking about legislation to prevent the providers of these services actually doing this.
Now, we often see there's a lot of issues around Gen Z and social skills, but will this bill affect that at all? Let's find out.
Well, I think that there's a great big experiment going on in Australia right now, isn't there? Because this has been introduced in Australia, and I think it would be wise to wait a little bit and see what they observe as happening there. What you kind of hope will happen is that people will start talking to each other a little bit more, and maybe their social skills will improve. But let's see.
So are you saying we should probably pause on the bill and see what happens in Australia?
I don't think there'll be any great disadvantage in doing that.
Now, obviously, getting tech companies on side is a big issue. Income streams could go down. And what about schools? How can we enforce schools into this bill as well?
There is a problem with the content that some of these social media sites allow people to access. And I think that the social media companies themselves, the tech companies, ought to be held accountable if people are able to access harmful stuff on their systems.
Yeah.
Rather than prosecuting the users, I think we effectively should be thinking about legislation to prevent the providers of these services actually doing this. I mean, there have to be carrots and sticks, won't there?
Yeah.
Effectively, if they're found to be doing things which are against the regulations and against the rules, then we'll have to prosecute them. I mean, what I understand is that there was a plan with the Online Safety Act to be able to fine tech companies 10% of their global income, which I should imagine for some of the tech companies is larger than the national debt. So I mean, how workable that will be, I don't know. Well, we've visited a lot of schools, and many schools now are just taking the phones off the pupils as they come into school. They put them in boxes, and the pupils can get their phones as they leave school. And that seems to be quite a simple, workable system. It doesn't require any legislation. It just requires the principals and heads of the schools to decide that's what they want to do, and they can introduce whatever rules they like within their schools that are reasonable. The idea that children need to have the phones at school because that's safe is, I think, a little bit far-fetched. I mean, my generation managed to go in and out of school, and none of us had phones, and if there were problems, the parents were able to contact the schools. So I think this idea that children need to be immediately contactable by their parents while they're at school is probably a little overstated.
Earlier this week, I talked to business owner Andrew Woolrich on his recent viral sensation on TikTok. We discussed the high street and how businesses can survive in this tough time.
I think it's part of a greater problem, isn't it, that people are struggling for money, so they're a bit hard up, and therefore we all have to save every penny we can, and sometimes that involves not going to the high street, not going to the local shop. And when times are tough, I can't really blame anybody for that, as much as I'd love everybody to come and shop local, and in our hearts I think we all want to do it, but you can't always. So it probably comes down to certain changes in the way certain people hoard very large amounts of money and the rest of us don't have enough money, but that goes into a very different topic that I
won't push you.
They will be my personal opinions and not those of my business.
Yeah, of course. How would you maybe try and improve the high streets?
I think trying to offer something different. So I think one of the reasons that we're managing to weather the storm, firstly, you're right, Bury's quite healthy, but you can't do what you do here anywhere else. So it's not just a cafe. I think if we were just a cafe, we wouldn't be here anymore. There's been cafes that have come and gone in the time that we've been here in Bury. It's having a few strings to your bow as a business so that you've got multiple revenue streams. That's from the business's angle. If you want to try and set up, I think you kind of got to have that. As customers and people, I think where you can, just it's use it or lose it.
Yeah, and you talked about like different cafes. I know Lima Coffee.
Yeah,
that's a good example of having different.
Exactly.
You don't really compete, but you kind of do. I don't know.
No, I do. I mean, yes, we sell coffee and they sell coffee, but the people drinking coffee here, doing so because they're here for the games. I don't think there's tons of people around town, although they should. Our coffee's pretty good, but they don't often come in just for the coffee. The coffee is good coffee. It's not just instant cheap stuff that we chuck together, but it's a gaming reason. It's about socialising, spending time with people. Whereas their whole thing is absolutely coffee, and they've got the brewing rooms and all sorts of stuff, which is cool. Like, I think it's definitely, it's almost like a museum of coffee,
isn't it?
as opposed to just a coffee shop, which is definitely unique. Like, you can't.
No, but I think like the point was that they've got income streams of, like, they do tours, they've got they sell their coffee, not just in mugs but in bags. What kind of income streams? What different income streams have you guys got?
Cool.
Do you like rent out?
Yeah, for us it's more so we're food and beverage, as you've mentioned. So we are a cafe. We do hot food, snacks, cakes, all that kind of stuff. You can come in and pay admission to play our board games, much like you'd go bowling or go to the cinema. So there's a fee for sitting at our table if you're using our games. Then we have a retail store selling board games, selling trading card games, and we also have regular event nights that you buy tickets to come along. So it's kind of those four main revenue streams, with our website as well being somewhere that you can buy. At the minute it's a bit iffy with board games, but we're working on that. But you can buy all the event tickets and pre-order things on there as well. So it's just, it comes in from a few different angles, and that's the way that it all adds up.
I also talked to Mark Cordell, CEO of our Bury St Edmunds bid, who gave me some more insights into the effect business rates have on small to medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs.
The effect it has on businesses is horrendous, because it's announced in October. Not only was an increase in minimum wage announced at the budget, which increases costs for businesses, and then the government make the assumption that all of the people currently in receipt of the minimum wage will get that increase, whereas of course the reality is businesses will change their behaviour and they'll employ less staff. Increasing the minimum wage for teenagers or under 21s seems like, in theory, a good idea. But when the difference between employing a young person and somebody with experience is reduced, because the under 21s minimum wage went up, again, businesses will choose not to employ young people. It's a very, very simplistic view from the government that when they increase costs, businesses are going to continue to employ the same amount of people, and therefore their income to the government coffers will be X, because it changes people's behaviour. And when you think that that's on top of what was announced in the budget in 2024, which came into effect in April, which was really ranking up national insurance contributions, as well as minimum wage and reducing business rate reliefs, all of this added together is basically a tsunami of 18 months of additional costs on businesses. And there comes a time when businesses just can't afford that. Most recently, a cafe in Bury showed us a breakdown that if you went in and bought a £12 or £11.99 meal for lunch, when they broke it all down with all of the additional costs, everything, it's about 19p profit in a dish. Now that is clearly unsustainable. All of the businesses can short term perhaps take on board these additional costs, but long term it's just not feasible. And the fact that, as you touched on right at the beginning, on budget day, new rateable values were announced to start from April, with some horrendous increases. And nationally, that's replicated across the country. It's going to detrimentally affect all businesses, but particularly hospitality because of the size of their premises. And many are going to cease operating. Now, at this moment in time, I'm not aware of any that has actually happened to in Bury yet, but it would be absolutely naive of me, Alistair, to think that's not going to happen. We can't be immune to this. And it's so frustrating that most of these increases are from a government that state their number one priority is growth in the economy. Well, they're shooting themselves in the foot. And it's very, very frustrating. And for our businesses, they're at the end of their tether.
Thank you for joining me for this roundup of Bury's big stories this week. That's all from this week's news in Bury St Edmunds. Thanks for watching again. Hit like if you found this useful, subscribe for more Bury St Edmunds news, and share it with your friends. See you next week.